lot of wet. Everyone, Garrett Williams, G&M Outdoor Services, back at you for another video. Today's video I want to talk about what happened with a local repair shop. Kind of want to mention this to you guys so hopefully someone out there can watch this and maybe learn something from this, and ideally maybe have this not happen to you. So just a quick little backstory on this truck. This was the first truck that we bought. So when we bought this, we had absolutely no idea about trucks, about big rigs like this. There's a guy locally that we knew that we worked with a bunch. He came and looked at it. And he said, yeah, overall it looks great. It looks like a good truck. We've learned a ton since. Looking back now, we probably wouldn't have bought this truck, but we did anyway. So we've learned a ton since, but the only way to learn, is to go out and make the mistakes on your own and learn. Sometimes you can learn from other people's mistakes, but a lot of times everyone always says, oh, learn from everyone else's mistakes, but that's hard. It's easier said than done. Sometimes certain things you have to do yourself, I found, in order to really learn the lesson. So anyway, here's what happened. So we got this truck. It's from a owner operator. We found out shortly after we got it, the dude, he didn't, for like the last month, it seems like he had it. He didn't do like any maintenance to it. So it needed a new air filter. The oil was way overdue. Just like the guy just like completely neglected it and just like ran it into the ground for probably a couple months or even a year before he got his new truck. So we ended up there's a ton of little things. So we've had his truck about 2 years, by the way. But there was a ton of little things right off the bat, and it wasn't a big deal, but they started to add up pretty quick. So we kept fixing it, and it was going good after a while. We started to have some oil leaks. The rear main seal over in here was leaking oil. The head gasket was leaking a little bit of oil. The gasket right in there was leaking a little bit. A few other ones. So we had a local repair shop go redo all the oil seals. And we got it back. It was great. It didn't leak any oil, or I should say it was great for about 2 minutes. When we brought it in, it was about 17 grand. 17 grand in repairs, which for big motor like this isn't crazy. It seemed like a lot for what they did, honestly. It's a little bit of work, but we didn't know if it's 17 grand worth, but that's what it was. It was a local repair shop. I'm not going to mention their name, but their initials are CTC, so you can figure that out on your own. But so I did a bunch of oil seals and everything. It was great. This truck never leaked. It never burned or leaked a drop of coolant in the 2 years that we had it. The coolant system's perfect. Never got hot. Never, none coming out of the blow-by, nothing. So it was just the oil leaks, which is, this truck has like 700,000. This is a Cummins ISM or ISX motor. Anyway, so we do all that. We get the gaskets done, fix all the oil leaks, we're good to go. So we noticed right away on the blow-by on the other side, like right away we get the truck back, there's a lot of coolant coming out of the blow-by, which has never happened before. So there was none when we brought it there, and then it was this as soon as we got it back, which as you can see is a lot. Coolant. Right when we got it back, there was a ton of coolant coming out. It was like truck sat for 10 minutes, it was like a pool of coolant, and it was like right after we got it, within like 1,500 miles, 1,000 miles, like it was right away. We noticed as soon as we got back to the shop, we noticed. And so we called up the shop, and just to make it clear to you guys, I am by no means a mechanic. I know how to drive these trucks. I've been around trucks, not quite this size, a little bit smaller, but I've been around trucks my whole life. I know the basics, but I'm by no means a mechanic. So that's hence why I wasn't working on it, and we had a local shop doing it, or our mechanic. So just a disclaimer. So I'm just telling you what I know and from what I understand. So we get it back, and it's leaking coolant right away out of the blow-by. All the oil leaks were good. It's leaking coolant right away. So we call the shop, and we're like, hey, this truck's leaking coolant out of the blow-by really bad, and it's never done that. So this is where things kind of went south. So when everyone makes mistakes, if you go out and you do anything, if you sit there on the couch your whole life, you probably never make a mistake. if you run a business, you work on trucks, you do stuff, you're gonna make mistakes. And it doesn't matter that you make mistakes. What matters is you make it right when you do. That's the hard part. That's what a lot of people struggle with. So that's what we struggle with. But when you have the goal and the mindset, no matter what mistake you make, you're gonna make it right all the time, then you got nothing to worry about. Where this is where, once we started having issues, this is where the guys we were working with up there at that local shop, where things started to go wrong. They kept changing their story, which the truth never changes. So when someone's changing their story, they're making stuff up, they're lying, they're being dumb. That's what started happening right away. So we call them and we're like, hey, it's got a coolant leak out of the blow-by and it's never done that. So what do we got going on here? Brought it back, and the first thing they said, well, the blow-by tube before went in the frame and it wasn't coming down to, exposed to the air.
So it was doing blow-by all along, you just never noticed it.
No. Hold the phone. As my buddy Brandon would say, hold the phone. No. We've had this truck 2 years. We've never had to add a drop of coolant. The coolant's always been good. If it was coming out in the frame, you would have seen the smoke. There's white smoke and stuff coming out. And you would have still noticed a puddle on the ground eventually. Like, no, this never leaked or dropped or burned a drop of coolant in 2 years. So you can't tell me that the blow-by hose was like stuck in the frame or something and it wasn't hitting the ground, okay? That's baloney. And they never wanted to admit they made any kind of mistake. So we bring it back, they take it all apart and they say, well, the head didn't seat right when they put because they put a new head gasket in, and when they took the head off, it didn't seat right. That's why it's leaking coolant. It was building pressure through the head gasket and then blowing coolant out the blow-by. Big problem. And then they also said, when they had the motor off, they checked the sleeves to make sure that there wasn't enough, the sleeves, where the cylinders are, still they were down. I think they come stock like 10 to 11 millimeter. And once they're worn down to 7, then they're worn out. They said they were all like 8 to 9 to 10. They were totally fine. Well, then we bring it back and they start taking it all apart. Then they say the head gasket didn't seat. That's why I was building pressure. And then they said that our sleeves are worn out and we need a whole new rebuild, which they quoted us like 55, 60 grand to redo the motor, everything. The water pump, that was a whole bunch of stuff, like 55, 60 grand. And they're saying, yep, it needs a rebuild and we'll do it for 60 grand. Well, for one, we're not gonna have you do it when you're being a little shisty. And for two, your cylinder sleeves, if they wear, it's like a millimeter for every 100,000 miles, roughly, from my understanding. So how do they wear a millimeter or two and 2,000 miles, 1,500 miles? Like that's not a thing. That's not possible. So then it was a whole thing, and then they kept changing their story, and the guy we were working with kept going back and forth, and they wouldn't take any accountability for anything. It was just going back and forth. They weren't standing behind their word. They kept making stuff up, so we kept negotiating back and forth. Eventually, they're finally like, here, take the truck. So then we ended up just not paying them anything for taking it all apart. And then we got our own guy, a different independent mechanic, come and put it all back together. But basically what we kind of boiled down to was, when they take, which just I understand, and this is where they went wrong, is when this head has been bolted on here for 600,000-700,000 miles, when you unbolt it, it can twist or it can, flex a little bit. So when you bolt it back down, it doesn't get a good seat. So then it's going to build pressure, and supposedly that basically ruined the whole motor. So what they should have done when they took it off is said, hey guys, because obviously I'm not the mechanic, they should have told me, hey, instead of ringing me up, hey, my man Garrett, your truck needs a new head because this one isn't going to seat right when we go to seat it, when we go to put the head gasket and everything back on, which I would have been like, okay, yeah, that's what it needs. Let's do it. The truck's got to, it's got to be right for it to run good for a while. Lack of communication, whatever it was, they didn't say anything. Basically didn't mention that to us. And I guess the lesson to learn here is to find someone really, really good, really trustworthy, which is hard to do because there's not really good diesel mechanics that can work on a truck like this. Aren't a dime a dozen, so you got to find a good one that really knows their stuff, and that's basically that's honest. That if or when they make a mistake, they're gonna do the right thing, because stuff gets real expensive real quick. So what we should have done is they should have told us we need a new head, and before they put it all back together, and we would have got a new head all put back together, and it wouldn't have been an issue. Now we had it all put back together, should all be good to go, ready to get on the road again. It's definitely a bummer deal, but I'm sure we're not the only one to have a problem like this. But basically, the lesson we learned was find someone that's really trustworthy. If or when they make a mistake, they'll do the right thing. I don't know, what's your guys' thoughts on the situation? The reason you go to a mechanic is because they're supposed to be the experts and know, okay, this head is twisted, it's not gonna seat right back when you bolt it back down, so you need to replace it before you put it all back together. They should have communicated that, and they didn't. And they were not willing in any way to take any responsibility. They said they would give us a little discount on the rebuild, but it was like 5-10%, not enough to make a difference. So basically they didn't make it right. They just left us high and dry and didn't care. So obviously we'll never go there again for any repairs. But we found a guy now that seems decent. So get the truck back on the road, see how it goes. So let me know any nightmare truck stories you guys had in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and remember, it is what you make it to be.